If you want to be able to back up your Windows PC, either for disaster recovery or for transferring your existing Windows operating system to a new hard drive, then stick around for this walkthrough of a cool bit of software which lets you do that and more. Today's demo is on Migrate Backupper. It's a software application that simplifies the backup of your data to other locations like external USB hard drives or network attached storage. As well as the ability to back up your data, it also allows you to clone your existing operating system to another hard drive or SSD. So if you want to upgrade your current drive to a bigger drive, you won't have to reinstall Windows and all your games and applications. You can just clone your current drive to a new drive. There's a standard version which you can download and use for free, and if you want some extra backup features, then you can upgrade to the Pro Edition for a relatively low cost. In this demo, I'll cover what you can do in the standard free version. To get started with Backupper, I'll open up a web browser and type in ubackup.com. That'll take you to the Migrate website where we can click on free download. We can then scroll down in the download center and choose Migrate Backupper Standard, and then click on the download freeware. That'll download a small installer file to your hard drive and leave it in your downloads folder. I'm just going to double click that to install the application. And I'm just going to accept all the default options for installation. It does offer for you to try the Pro version for free. I'm going to skip that and stay on the standard edition. Once installed, it puts a shortcut on the desktop, so let's go ahead and launch the application. So the interface itself is nicely laid out and it's simple to understand. We've got these tabs along the left hand side to navigate to what you want to do. You start off on the Home tab and initially it just shows a couple of shortcuts, but once you've completed some backups it keeps a history of those backup tasks here for easy access in the future. Before I go through the different types of backups that you can do, I just want to quickly show you the Tools tab, because this contains an option to create bootable media. So in the event that you need to do a full restore from a backup, either because of a disk failure or because you've upgraded to a new larger drive which is blank, then you can use this boot media to boot up your PC into the Backupper application and then restore any previously backed up images. So I highly recommend creating this boot media and testing that you can actually boot from it so that you've then got the confidence that you'll be able to restore a backup if you ever need to. So I'm going to click on Create Bootable Media, and we then need to choose whether we want a Linux boot disk or a Windows PE boot disk. I recommend choosing the Windows option mainly because it supports PCs with a modern UEFI BIOS, as well as PCs with the old style legacy BIOS. The Linux boot disk only appears to support the old legacy style BIOS. So I'll select Windows PE. We then get another option to download the WinPE media from the internet. I do recommend ticking this option, as this increases the reliability of the bootable media, particularly if the computer is using a modern UEFI BIOS. If you don't tick this box, the media may not boot correctly on modern PCs. We can click Next, and we can then choose whether to create the media on CD or DVD, USB media, or an ISO file. For most people, the USB option will be the best one to choose so that you can then use any spare USB flash drive to create your bootable media on. In my case, I'm doing this on a virtual PC. So the best option for me is to choose the ISO version, and that's going to save the ISO file on my desktop by default. I'll go ahead and click Next to create the bootable media. Okay, now I've got my boot media, let's take a look at the different types of backup that you can do with the free version. So let's go to the Backup tab, and the first one is System Backup. And what they mean by System Backup is that you can back up the disk that contains your Windows partition and boot information. Quite often there's only one disk inside a PC, so this would be classed as the system disk. But if there's more than one disk installed, then whichever disk contains the Windows partition is known as the system disk. And this backup option allows you to back up the Windows and boot partitions to a single image file. It doesn't back up any recovery partitions, as this would make it difficult to restore to a larger disk and utilise the extra space, so any recovery partitions are intentionally ignored when doing a system image backup. You can complete a system backup while Windows is running, as it uses a special Windows feature called Microsoft Volume Shadow Copy Service, which allows Windows to take snapshots so that it can then back up open files. Although this works fine, my preference is to boot the system up using the boot media that we created earlier, as this ensures there are no open files running because Windows itself isn't running. So I'm going to reboot the system using the boot media that we created earlier and then continue the demo. Okay, I've rebooted and the boot media has booted us straight into the backup application, which looks identical to how it does when it's running in Windows. I'll click on the backup tab and then select System Backup. And it will automatically select the system disk containing your Windows partition. We can change the task name to something more meaningful, so I'll just call it My Windows Backup. We then need to choose a location of where to save the backup to. If we click on Select a Local Path, we can choose any locally connected drive so that you could connect a USB drive and save the backup there. You can also choose to save the backup to a network location like a NAS drive or a shared folder on another PC. I'm going to save my backup to my network location. So I'll enter the path here and then click on the blue arrow. I can then enter a username and password which has access to that location. And then click OK. So we could just go ahead and click on Start Backup at this point, or we can go into the options and we can do things like add comments to the backup. We can change the backup mode and we can change the level of compression used for the backup. So let's just go back to the backup mode. We've got two options here. We've got Intelligent Sector Backup, which will only back up parts of the disk that contain data. Or we can make an Exact Backup, which will do a sector by sector backup and will back up the entire disk whether it contains data or not. I'll leave this on the recommended option. And once you're happy with the selected options, go ahead and click on Start Backup. We get a nice progress indicator to show us the status of the backup, and just for the purposes of the video, I'll skip ahead to the end of the backup. So the backup is completed successfully and we can click on Finish to take us back to the backup screen where you'll now see a backup task listed for the backup that we just did. If we click on the options icon, you can manage the backup, you can run the backup again, you can do an incremental backup, or you can restore the backup. Now I'm going to simulate a disk failure by removing my current disk and then installing a new larger disk as a replacement. We'll then restore that image to the new disk. So I've removed the existing drive to simulate a disk failure and I've replaced it with a new 2TB drive which is completely blank, and I've booted the PC using the boot media I created earlier. I'll click on the Restore tab and then click on Select Image File. I need to browse to my backup image, so mine is on a shared folder, so I'm going to click on Share NAS. And then click on Add Share. I'll type the path to my shared folder. And then I need to enter a username and password which has got access to that network location, so I'll deselect Anonymous and enter my credentials. And then click OK. We can see my image backup here. I can go into the folder and then select the image file. Once selected, we can click OK. We can leave this screen with the default settings because we want to restore this system backup and not individual partitions. I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. We now need to select a destination disk to restore the image to. So here we can see my new 2TB drive that I've installed. I'll click on that one and click Next. Now the app does recommend that you click this SSD alignment box. It says it will accelerate the reading and writing speed for the solid state drive. So I'll go ahead and tick that box and click Start Restore. If you're restoring to a brand new disk which has never been used before, you'll get this message to tell us the destination disk is different to the source. Would you like to convert the type to the same as the source disk? So you can go ahead and click on Yes. And if you don't choose anything, it will automatically choose Yes for you. Then the restore will start. By the way, there's no reason why you couldn't copy the backup image to another location like an external USB drive. The image file, which has a .ADI file extension, doesn't have to stay in its original location. You can save it to any location and you can also restore it from any location. That image is now restoring to the new disk and you can see its progress. I'll just skip ahead to the end. Okay, that image is now restored to the new disk, so I'll close this box here and let the system restart, and it should boot into my original Windows OS, but on the new 2TB disk. So let's go ahead and restart. So the system's booted fine into Windows on the new disk, but if you open File Explorer, you'll notice the hard drive capacity is still showing the same capacity it had on the old disk. It's still showing it's a 120 gig drive. So if your replacement drive is larger than the original drive, then we just need to go into the disk management utility. So I'll right click on the Windows logo and select Disk Management. We can see that the new 2TB drive is there, and also see that it's only currently using 120 gig, which is the capacity of the old drive. We just need to select our Windows volume, which is indicated by the C colon. Once selected, you can right click and choose Extend Volume. Then just click Next through the wizard, accepting all the defaults, and click Finish. We now have a 2TB volume. This is the reason the system backup doesn't back up any recovery partitions, because they're normally located at the end of the drive. If you included the recovery partition, then it wouldn't be possible to extend the Windows partition to use the remaining space. You'd have to manually delete the recovery partition first. The next backup type is called disk backup, and it's very similar to the system backup, the key difference being that the disk backup will back up the entire disk, including all partitions. And where there are multiple disks in the system, you're able to choose which disk to back up, as opposed to the system backup, which automatically picks the disk with the Windows partition and doesn't back up the recovery partition. This option is aimed at backing up disks which only contain data and not an operating system. Again, my preference is to boot up the PC with the bootable media to avoid any open files. Once you choose the disk to back up, the process is exactly the same as the system backup, where it will save the disk to an image file at your chosen location, and the restore process is exactly the same as well. The next backup type is file backup, and as the name suggests, this backup allows you to select files and folders to be backed up to an image file on local or network attached storage. You can also choose to save the backup to your own personal cloud storage if you have it configured on your PC, for example Dropbox, OneDrive or Google Drive. And so you can take advantage of scheduled backups, it's better to run this type of backup from within Windows rather than using the boot media. And when you select a folder to back up, it will back up all files and subfolders within that folder. You can also choose to back up individual files. So you can use the Control key and just click on the file that you want to back up, or you can press Control A to select all the files. I'm going to give my backup a new name just to give it something a bit more meaningful, so I'm just going to call it My File Backup. And once you've selected the data to back up, you then select the destination. So this is my USB drive, which is just connected to this PC. We can then click on Start Backup. Once a file backup has completed, you can go back and edit the backup task. You can add or remove files and folders from the backup selection for future backups. You can also run future backups as an incremental backup where only new or additional files added since the last backup will be backed up. Any files that were previously backed up will be skipped, resulting in a much quicker completion time. You can either run the backup manually by clicking on the backup task and selecting full backup or incremental backup, or you can set up a schedule to run the backup automatically at a specified time. You can configure a schedule to repeat at certain intervals, for example every day at 6 PM. The backupper application doesn't need to be running for the backup to take place. The scheduled backup will run automatically in the background at the specified time, and log files are saved so that you can later check that the backups have completed successfully. And the last backup type is cloud backup. This is similar to the standard file backup that we just looked at, but the backup is saved to Almy cloud storage instead of local or network drives. However, this option isn't included in the standard free version. To take advantage of the Almy cloud storage, you would need to buy a version of the app which includes cloud storage. There is one other option in the backup tab which is called AOMI One Key Recovery, but this is just an advert for another AOMI product, which lets you create your own factory recovery partition, which will then allow you to restore your system to your own factory default image with one click. And if you click on Learn More, it will take you to the product page where you can find out more. The next main tab is Sync. The standard free version of Backup includes a basic sync option which allows you to synchronize a folder and its contents to another location on local or network attached storage. The files and folders are stored as standard files and folders instead of a single backup file that is used for the other backup types. Like the other backups, you select the source folder that you want to sync and then select a destination. You can then run the sync task manually by clicking on Start Sync, or you can schedule a sync task to run at specified intervals. Any new files that are added to the source folder will automatically be synced to the destination folder the next time the sync runs. Note, however, with the basic sync, any files or folders that are removed from the source will not be removed from the destination, although this feature is available in the Pro edition. There are more advanced sync options available in the Pro version, which includes mirror sync, real-time sync, and two-way sync. The next tab is the Restore tab, and this is where you can restore any previously completed backups. You can choose to restore from an existing task, or simply select an image file. You would then browse to where the backup image file is stored and then click on Restore. The next tab is the Clone tab, and this tab allows you to clone an entire disk or partition directly to another disk, without the need to store the image in a temporary location like a USB drive. Like in the previous backup options covered so far, you can just copy directly from disk to disk. This is one reason why you might want to upgrade to the Pro version, as this has the ability to clone your system disk directly to another drive. The standard free version will only let you clone a disk that isn't your Windows disk, and this is definitely the easiest way to upgrade to a larger disk and migrate your existing Windows installation. But if you don't want to upgrade, it's still possible to migrate Windows. You just need to use the system backup that we looked at earlier to back up your image to a temporary location and then restore that image to a new disk. It's 2 steps instead of 1, and you need to have that temporary storage location. But just to show you how easy it is to clone a system disk, I'll switch to a Pro version of Backup and clone my Windows disk to another drive. It's simple to upgrade to the Pro version. Once you've purchased the software, you'll receive a license key, which you can then enter by going into Settings, clicking Register, and then entering your license code. The Pro version will then be immediately unlocked. You would need to recreate your boot media, so it's using the Pro version instead of the standard version. I've already got a Pro version of the boot media, so I'll shut down, add a new disk, and then restart using the Pro version. I've now added a new 4TB SSD to the system, and I've started up using the Pro version of the boot media. I'll go to the Clone tab and choose System Clone. It will automatically select the existing Windows disk as the source disk, and it will prompt you to choose a destination disk. We can see the new 4TB disk I've just installed, so that will be the destination disk. You'll notice that the new disk is reporting as a basic MBR partition. MBR stands for Master Boot Record, and is a legacy partition type that only supports partitions of up to 2 TB. We could just go ahead and clone the disk now, but it won't automatically use the extra 2 TB of space until we manually extend the partition like we did earlier with the system backup. If your new drive is 2 TB or less, you don't need to worry about this and you can go ahead and start cloning. If your new disk is bigger than 2 TB like mine is here, and you want to ensure that the cloning process uses all of the new disk automatically, we need to convert the partition type of the new disk to the GPT partition type. To do that, we click on the Tools tab and click on Windows Shell command. I'll open a tool called DiskPart, which is a disk partitioning tool. We can type list disk to see all the hard drives in the system. We can see here that the original 2 TB disk is labelled as disk 0 and my new 4 TB disk is labelled as disk 1. So I'll run the command select disk 1. And if your new disk has been used before or has any data on it, you can wipe the disk clean by typing clean and pressing enter. If your new disk is brand new, then you don't need to wipe the drive, but it won't do any harm if you do. Just ensure that you've selected the correct disk from the list. Otherwise, you could end up wiping the original by mistake. Now we just need to convert the partition type of the new disk to the GPT partition type by typing convert GPT and pressing enter. Once that's done, we can close the command window And then we just need to reload the disk by clicking on the options menu and choosing reload. Now let's go back to the clone tab and choose system clone, and you'll notice that the disk is now reporting as a GPT partition type. I'll select the destination disk and click next. As my new drive is an SSD, I'll tick the SSD alignment box, and then I'll go ahead and click on start clone. That's the cloning now complete. I'll shut down, remove the original 2TB drive, and that will just leave me with the new 4TB disk installed. I'll then switch back on and it should boot up onto the new disk. So here we are on the new 4TB disk, and if we look in File Explorer, we can confirm it is using all of the available disk space. So that's it for this demo. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Click on the like button if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel to get more content like this. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.